Ultimately, what makes a trust a revocable trust is really your ability to change it. With a revocable trust, you're something called the grantor, meaning you create the trust. You're often the trustee, meaning you control anything that's in it. And you're the beneficiary of that trust during your lifetime. What all that means is that you're still in full control of your entire estate, but we're putting in place a structure that helps us avoid probate later by moving assets into that trust now so that we don't have to go to court to move things over when you ultimately pass away. An irrevocable trust is often used for more advanced planning, something like asset protection planning or even estate tax minimization. This is because using an irrevocable trust typically removes assets from your estate and takes them out of the reach of creditors and may take them or removes them from your estate for estate tax purposes. A revocable trust is also a really strong tool for incapacity planning. Because we typically are moving assets into a revocable trust now, if you're incapacitated, your trust document names a successor trustee who can step in more or less the traditional role that you'd think a power of attorney would serve, but they're going to have immediate access to your assets. They're going to be able to make sure that your assets are used for your benefit to take care of you, and ultimately to help pay for things like long-term care costs. Probate at its core is a public process. And so if you don't do any sort of an estate plan, you may expose your assets to having to go through a court administration. That court administration is on public record. We have to file something called an inventory of the estate that itemizes the different assets that go through a probate proceeding. We can avoid having to do that by having a revocable trust in place. An irrevocable trust really takes all the same steps that we go through in probate and moves them to a private administration where your trustee can make sure final affairs are settled, but without having to report all those assets to the general public. Of course, there's always different life events that might pop up that might trigger a time to update your estate plan. Those can be things like the birth of a new child, the death of a loved one, if somebody who's named in your estate plan is no longer willing or able to serve, that's a really good time to make sure you're dusting off the estate plan to make sure that it still fits your needs. As you can tell, a revocable trust is a really strong planning tool. It helps us do things like avoid probate. We're able to make sure that your assets aren't exposed to the public and can keep things a little bit more private. And you can continue to make changes to it, just like you could a will during your lifetime. So if you're interested in figuring out if a trust is a good fit for you, we'd love to talk to you about it. So give NC Planning a call.